What's up everyone, Sixpenny here, and I'm back with another gameplay tutorial for PGA Tour 2K23, and today I'm going to show you specifically how to account for different elevation changes in your math as you're playing this game, because whether it's downhill or uphill is going to make a big change on the actual flight distance of the club you're using. So that's what we're going to review today. I have tons of tutorials on the channel already with much more coming. So check out the full playlist in the description if you're looking for more PGA Tour 2K23 content. There is tons on the channel, not only tutorials, but career mode series, gameplay videos, new courses, everything's out there. But today, let's talk about elevation changes. So when you get into this game, you're gonna have information on the pin. So we see the pin there is gonna give us 186 yard shot, downhill 11 feet. It's also going to give you information on your club that you have selected. So at the club spot, you're going to see it says 178 yards is what this 6-iron is going to carry, and you see downhill 12 feet. So the 12, what we're basically looking at today is that downhill and uphill factor. If the little arrow or triangle is pointing down, it means it's downhill. If the triangle is pointing up, it means it's uphill. And I'm going to show you different examples of this. We are at our home course of the channel, Sixpenny's Lair here. So the calculation is actually really easy. So let's look at this downhill example. For every 3 yards of downhill, it's going to add 1 yard to the club's carry distance. It's the opposite with uphill. For every 3 yards uphill, it's going to take off a yard from the club's carry distance. Let's take a look at this one. We have an 186 yard par 3, downhill 11 feet. The easiest math to do is just take the number given on screen, 11 feet, divide that by 3, and you have your yardage effect. If it's downhill, that number is gonna be added to the club. If it's uphill, that number is gonna be subtracted from the club. So we have a 6-iron, 178 yard carry, downhill at the flag. So I usually do it with the flag's position. The landing spot is technically 12, but 11 divided by 3 is basically 4. 12 divided by 3 is 4. So we're going to use 4 for our calculation purposes. So it's downhill. So if I hit this club full 100%, 178 carry, it should carry 182. All right, so just to illustrate the distance effect here with elevation, what I did was I put the game on beginner and I turned off tempo just so I can hit that perfect power and show you all the effect. So if I hit 100% power here, we got the 100 power. We pay attention to the ball's landing zone, 182. Exactly what we thought. This ball, so 3-to-1 ratio, every 3 feet 1 yard. It flew 4 yards, which it was a perfect club in this situation. But how do you use this in other situations? So I'm going to show you a few more examples, because you're going to have to compensate. If it's significantly downhill, you're going to have to club down. If it's significantly uphill, you're going to have to club up. So you're going to use the information you get and of the elevation and change your shot setup accordingly. So I'm going to pause the video and move to another shot in this round. All right, so here we are. We're in the middle of the fairway on a par 5, hole number 2 of Sixpenny's Lair, and we have a 27-foot uphill shot relative to the golfer's position. So we have a wedge in our hand, and then I got this question a lot last year on my 2K21 video. The elevation change is the same for each club. Now, what's important to know as well right now before we get into this example, for a downhill shot, your ball is going to be in the air for a longer period of time. That means that the wind is going to have a greater effect. So with regards to left and right movement, and adding or taking off distance. So the wind effect is greater with downhill shots. Now uphill shots, your ball flight is going to spend less time in the air. It's going to fly lower. So in that case, it's going to have, the wind is going to affect it for less amount of time. So you can take off a little bit on your calculations for the wind. But here we are. 126 yards, a gap wedge in hand. We need this is how I set up my shot. You all can do it however way you want. So how I set up my shots, I set up my landing spot. So for example, we know this 126 yards uphill, 27 feet. So when I'm hitting into this green, I'm going to pick the landing spot. So I'm going to move my aim cursor about, I want to land this right at it. I'm going right for this thing. I'm attacking this. It's uphill. And so I'm going to try for a landing spot of around 122. So this is where, when I set up my shot, this is where I'm actually going to do the calculation based on my aim marker. In this one, it happens to be the same, but if I was to choose 128 or 118 here, it'd be uphill 26 instead of 27. But we're going for 122. We're going right for this pin to try to hold this out, right? So to do this, same calculation. 27 divided by 3 is 9. It happened to be an easy math, right? If you don't want to do this math in your head, save your brain, use a calculator. Hey, no shame in using a calculator, having a calculator with you. Even though, you know, this part's one of the easy math versus live percentages. So 9, it's uphill, which means if I fly this shot right here, 122 yards, subtracted by 9, that's how many yards are going to be taken from the shot. So 9 yards can be taken from the shot. That's going to give us 113. 113 is if I hit a perfect partial 95% right here, this club is going to carry 113. So what do I need to do? Well, it's easy. I need to move my aim marker until I'm 9 yards past this point. So, because that's how I'm going to compensate. So I'm going to go to 131. I'm going to go to 131. To do this, I'm going to have to hit a partial shot, a partial pitching wedge, or I could do what I talked about in my shot shaping video. If you have not watched that, you can use shot shaping to hit that same spot as well. So there's a couple ways you can do it. So 122 plus 9 is going to give us 32. So 31. 31. Why you use a calculator, right? No, I said 31 and I mixed it up. So you can either do it by elevation change, by changing the loft of the club, or by hitting a partial shot. I usually side towards the partial shots. I love hitting partial shots. A lot of people use shot shaping. Do whatever you want. So we compensated for the elevation change. We have to hit a 90%, 5% less. Now, one thing you have to pay attention to, I'm doing a video specifically on lie ranges, so top right of the screen. Even when you're in the fairway, a lot of times in the fairway, you have a 99 to 100% lie. So that means you could get 100% flight out of this pitching wedge, which goes 139. Or you could get 1% less out of the fairway. You'll especially notice this in uphill lies, which is what we're on. So if this does not fly 122, it's either because I missed power or the lie range was 99%. But let's hit the shot. Okay, there we go. Perfect 190. Pay attention to the flight. It landed 120. So perfect example. But hey, 122 would have been in the lie angle. So it was an uphill lie. If we go back, so I'm going to hit the start button and declare unplayable just so we can go back to the last shot we were at. And just so I can show you, if you see the uphill lie slightly, so if you hold down LB for shot shaping, you have lie grid turned on, you're going to see these grids are moving towards the golfer. So it's an uphill lie. And also now look what it's showing. It's showing a 98 to 99% lie, which is different than what we had before in the same spot, which is interesting, right? But yeah, so we got the 99% of the pitching wedge carry. So we wanted to carry it. If we go back to our pitching wedge, it's going to take off 1%. So, and it basically did. I think it took off a little bit more than that from the uphill lie as well. So we have a slight green uphill lie. It's just barely moving towards us, but that's going to take off a yard as well. So in this case, the uphill lie took off a yard. The lie angle, the lie percentage took off about a yard. and that's why we landed 120 instead of 122. So there's a lot you have to think about when you're setting up these shots, but this video was just to help you with the basics of elevation changes and how they affect the ball both downhill and uphill. So keep in mind, on the ones, you don't find very many 60 yards downhill, right? But if you do find those, you don't find them very often. If it's 60 yards downhill, that wind is really going to affect it. I will be doing videos specifically on wind, specifically on playing from the rough and different lie percentages, lie angles as well, which we touched on a little bit of everything in this, but my main goal is provide you a overview on how to account for elevation changes in your math. It's simple. It's so simple, right? Every 3 feet uphill or downhill is going to affect the distance by 1 yard. And pick your landing spot and then adjust for the elevation change. That's always the easiest way to do it. Now, this example is a perfect example of that, but don't forget, you have to take into account not only the elevation, you have to take into account lie percentages. You have to take into account uphill or downhill lies. You have to take into account wind as well. So there's a lot that comes into play with setting up a golf shot. I will be doing a full guide, like full tutorial hole series that I do, and I go through every shot I take and show you my math for each thing and how I'm thinking. You'll get to a point where this is super fast, right? Some people play only by feel and they see this 27 feet and they're like, okay, I'm going to take off a few yards. You can do that, but honestly, the math is really easy. You don't even have to use a calculator for this. You can if you want to, but you don't have usually huge numbers uphill or downhill that you have to use. There's some big ones, but for the most part, it's less than 30. So there you have it, everybody. Thank you so much for watching this video to the end. I hope you all got some enjoyment and found this helpful. If you got some enjoyment, drop a like, subscribe if you want to see more. There are plenty of tutorials on the channel that you can watch at this point. The full gameplay tutorial playlist is in the description. Many more will be coming. I will see you all in the next one. As always, have a fantastic day, everybody.